This is House Planning Help episode 245. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith, and this is the podcast for you if you're interested in self-build, because I'm exploring what houses we should be building in the 21st century and trying to break down the major roadblocks that may get in our way. Coming up in this session, my guest is Elinor Olisa, and we're looking at her family's mission to build a healthy home. This was one that featured on Grand Designs, and as I was watching, I was thinking, that would be so interesting to dig into some of the process behind that. So luckily, I saw that John Palmer from Inhabit was involved, and I wondered if he could connect me. He kindly did. Thank you, John. Top man is John. So that's how we're able to bring this podcast to you. And it may even be that you're in a similar situation. So Elinor is going to have a load of information that's going to be so helpful. We'll get to that in a second. If you haven't heard this podcast before, well, we're trying to help you if you're on the house building journey. We obviously have a strong emphasis on sustainable practices, health, comfort, energy efficiency. We love all of that, but you're not going to build a house just like that. There's a lot more that's involved. So we try and give you a rounded idea of what is to come, what you can expect, so that when you get there, hopefully it's just a little bit easier. And also, I run my production company, Regen Media, where in a way we're trying to continue the same sorts of themes. If we can help you out, if you're someone who believes you created a great building, you want to shout about it, video just works so well, and we are definitely the people that want to work with you. I'm pleased to say we've had some really interesting projects so far this year. I can't tell you too much about all of them. One of them, we're working with TV presenter Charlie Luxton, so that was quite exciting. Quite a few retrofit projects this year. We've got another retrofit one coming up with Green Building Store, a new build with Archetype that I'm really excited about, so can't wait for all of that. If we can help you out, we'll put a link in the show notes to Regen Media. Come and find us. We'd love to help you bang the drum about what you've been doing. Let's get to our featured interview with Elinor Olisa, and she and her family appeared on the last season of Grand Designs, which focused on their quest to build a healthy home. So we started the podcast today in a slightly different way because we want to get some background on this.
Our children, two of them, have got severe allergies, and it's something that up until the point that we bought the plot of land, we'd been struggling with it because they are quite life restricting, the allergies that they have. We don't actually always know when they're going to have a reaction. We don't know all of the things they're allergic to, and it becomes quite limiting. And I think a couple of months into the process of buying the plot, we realised we had an opportunity to not only build a house, but to build a house that would have an impact on our children's health.
Do you mind if we just focus on what are their allergies and what happens, just so that someone else who might be in a similar situation can understand?
The boys suffer from multiple severe anaphylactic allergies. They are food, they are food-based, they're air-based. Some of them we just don't know what they are based, but we discovered quite early on in both of their lives that they were allergic to wheat, dairy, eggs, nuts, soya, all pulses and beans, oats. Goodness, I've got the most ridiculous long list of things that the boys are allergic to, which actually makes it much easier for us to say what they can eat, which thank God they can eat something.
How did you test all of that?
We were very fortunate that with my eldest son, we found a paediatrician who specialises in children's allergies, and she saved his life, and then she set us on a path that has made sure that our children grow up healthy and strong and able to deal with these allergies. But it involves skin prick tests followed up by blood tests, and the combination of the two will let you know the severity of the allergy, because you can't just tell from one or the other. They're not intolerances, they suffer from life-threatening allergies. It's quite a big distinction, and I think it's something that we in general in society are becoming a bit more aware of, but we have over the first few years of both of their lives, actually it's been a battle. Explain to people the fact that it isn't a fad. It isn't just the fact that they'll get a little bit of a tummy ache. It's that they could die if they are exposed to something. The allergic reactions can vary. One day you might not have such a strong reaction as to the next. It depends on their health at that time, their immune systems at that time. So it's a constant battle for us to play it safe and to make sure that we educate other people whilst keeping them safe.
This must have weighed on you quite heavily as a parent.
When you have children, everything weighs heavily on you, I think, and it doesn't matter what, you worry about them all the time, don't you? And it doesn't really matter whether it's the fact they've got a cold or if you're not sure if they should have taken their first steps yet, whatever part it is of their lives that it is that you're concerned about, which school they're going to go to. So as parents, we do just worry all the time. Building this house was actually a bit of a I suppose it hit home to us about how much it does impact on our lives, but then also made us realise how the boys do just get on with their lives. We've made it our mission to make sure that they don't feel restricted as far as possible. All children feel sometimes that they're not getting everything that they want, but we try and make sure that they partake in every part of their lives that they want to.
Obviously, you can create an environment that is safe for them, and we're going to talk about this because it's very interesting, some of the ways that you've brought things into the house which you believe are healthier. But you can only do that in the house. So what happens when they are out of the house? Do you still have to be very careful about what happens at school? And
we have to work with everybody that takes care of our children. And at the moment, they're at an age where they will never be without a responsible adult. And for us, it's making sure that whichever environment they're in, whether it's at school, at a friend's house, a grandparent's house, that everybody knows what to do in that situation. And also empowering the boys to take a level of responsibility at their young age for it. So they know what they're allergic to, they know what to do, and they know the right questions to ask and things to explain to an adult if they don't quite understand it. I imagine that will get harder as they get older and they go out.
They
into
won't
the world.
grow out of this.
We don't know. We don't know
Just
which
can't
ones.
tell.
Yeah, we don't know which allergies they might grow out of. It's they change, they add. Some of them get less, some of them get more. Extra ones get thrown into the ring. But we do hope that they do. And you asked a question about we can manage them within our home and how we deal with it when they're outside of the home. We feel that when they're in the house, they get a bit of respite. So they can be free in this house. They can eat what they want. They can touch what they want. They can run around and be free within the home because we've made it as safe as we possibly can. We're here watching out for them. And our hope is that time in the house, particularly when they're sleeping with the benefits of the MVHR unit on, that will give their bodies a chance to recover somewhat from what's going on in the outside environment, which we can't control.
How does this house contrast what you had before?
Our previous properties, my first time we started off living in a new build, but it was quite damp. And then we moved into Georgian and Victorian properties after that, which again have quite a lot of damp, lots of drafts, lots of historic dust. There's a lot going on in those houses. And we weren't responsible necessarily for all the paints that went onto those walls. We weren't for the flooring, for what went into the actual cavities of the walls, etc. So we just don't know how that was impacting on them. We also have learned more now about how that impacts on all of us, not just on the children, but whatever your kitchen cabinets are made up of, what's in your carpet. All of these things can actually have an impact on everybody's health.
So the house that you were going to design, I know this is the story that I'm investigating as well, but how much of it was, we want a new house, and how much was, well, actually, we really do want to make this about them?
Well, firstly, we wanted a house because we weren't doing very well. We weren't doing very well. I think we were not. We weren't progressing very far with our search for a home to own. It was all part of this. I think it was all completely bound together, to be honest. It was an incredible journey. It's something that we felt so privileged to take this adventure and have this opportunity. It's been, a highlight of our lives, most definitely. It is like having a fourth child doing this. We both run our own businesses, and I suppose a business has a purpose and a USP. And this house, very clearly for us, was going to be about the health and the future-proofing. What can we do that might be able to show other people that it's actually viable to build a property? It doesn't have to cost millions of pounds. It is something that we can do. And in doing that, we can make choices that will be good for the environment, good for our bodies, good for our well-being when we're in them.
So you found a piece of land online, and it sounds like that process was quite simple. You didn't have much competition, or you put in a good bid? How did that bit work?
When we found the plot, it came with the caveat that the people who were selling it did want a family to live on it, and that gave us the advantage over developers. I suspect if we were in the race to purchase this plot against developers, we wouldn't have bought it. We wouldn't have been allowed to buy it.
That's interesting. And then the big question then, you want a healthy home. How did you start your research?
The first thing we did was find companies that could help us in this. I think there was a surprisingly little online about it. We expected there to be a lot more. Because we spend a lot of our time researching products for our children, food, clothing, everything for them. We spend a lot of time reading the fine labels, trying to find out what's made up.
Sorry, I've got to stop you then. So clothing, right. We're trying to find a product that's going to be good? What are we looking at?
I've probably become slightly obsessive. No, so the boys are allergic to wool, and that's, again, probably, we would never have thought of investigating what was in clothing. They also both had issues with their skin because of the allergies that they were having when they were small, so you want to make sure they're wearing breathable clothing. You become very conscious of, is it a natural product, natural fibres, or is it synthetic fibres? How is this going to be when they're wearing it? We obviously have to avoid wool, although wool is a very natural product, we realise. Won't get into the whole vegan debate now in any circumstances, but it's reading those fine labels. And I think what we found was going on to, people talk now, they want to be known as ethical, they want to be known as conscious, retailers this is, but it doesn't seem to have transcended that far yet into the interiors market, let alone the building trade, which is, gosh, the amount of waste and the bad product that gets made in the building product. We were very aware of how much we were throwing away, the cost of getting rid of wrapping, packaging, all of this. There has to be a better solution to it. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be. We didn't have time to find one, but I feel that you could go on in this process forever. We had to draw a line about what we were going to do. So we said we're just going to do our very best to research every single product that comes into this build and do it in the same way that we would for any other item that we were sourcing for the children. And it was interesting conversations. Some people were fantastic. Some people were already thinking about what legislation might come in years to come. And other people had no clue, had never been asked it, just didn't know what we were saying. They'd talk to us about the fact that they were eco-friendly because they didn't use too many lorries. And that would kind of be as far as the conversation would go. But actually, we did find that quite a lot of products from Europe do know they are actually labelled as low VOCs. They are actually labelled about the fact that they will not impact on your health, but not so much in the UK.
Who were you finding? Was there anyone that you came across that you thought, this is a good starting point, I'll go here or I'll speak to them?
Surprisingly, throughout the build, Instagram became a great source. Which
is one I don't know about. Go on, how are you using that?
There are an awful lot of people who are on this same quest for various reasons, or have taken an element of our quest. And through them, you can do a lot of learning, and be that from the allergy side, from the home building side. By putting the two together, we got quite a lot of resources. The States are very good. There are websites, there are retailers, there are definitely activists out there trying to make things happen. But essentially, we did end up building our own website, and we're now endeavouring to keep that up to date. But there isn't at the moment one place to go. A small group of quite large high street retailers did get together several years ago to try and come up with a set of objectives around healthy products and being transparent to the people that are buying the products about what's in them so they can make that choice. But it doesn't seem to have gone very far. That had tailed off by the time we even began our build. Something needs to happen at a higher level that insists you cannot sell a product that has poisonous paint, poisonous glue, poisonous MDF makeup in it. We have to start to ask those questions. I did say I wasn't going to say anything about this, but the whole vegan and gluten-free, what should we call it, health quest that's happened at the moment also worked in our favour, because people are actually more aware that you're going to ask questions. We live in a house where every time we go to a restaurant, every time we go to somebody's house, we have to ask them what's in their food. And it's not that we're picky eaters. That aside, we might be picky eaters, but it's actually really important for us to know. And obviously lots of things did happen in the press around the time, very sad stories in the press around the time of us finishing our build, of the impact that improper labelling can have on people with allergies that my children suffer from. And we've seen a shift now. It is much more acceptable to ask questions. If we can take that shift into other parts of our industries, it will benefit everybody.
So does a lot of this come down to labelling? You sound like you're someone that's very thorough in reading through things. Unfortunately, you've been forced into it a bit. I don't know whether some of it is instinctive too, but is that what it comes down to? A lot of specifying is just what information is available and knowing which bits to look at?
I think it's not instinctive, actually. For me, before the boys, before the build, I would definitely have gone for the product that was cheapest and that looked the best. I wouldn't necessarily care about what was inside it.
And I'm going to say this again because, really important, the cheapest and what it looks like. I think what percentage of the market must that drive?
Yeah, all of us, you see something that looks good and it's a bargain, that's amazing, let's get it. And you'll probably buy new over old. You probably immediately look to a brand new product over sourcing something that was secondhand or upcycled or whatever it might be. That's just,
might come down to price again,
Yeah, I think we are. And we had a budget. We were lucky enough to have some money to spend on this, but we couldn't, if money was no object, what you could do is amazing. You could make the most healthy home.
But sometimes what happens when money is no object is things get bigger and you still have the same struggles.
Yes. Yeah, and they have the same impacts that you have from that. For us, again, we were limited. Money certainly caused this, as well as our hope that we could make less of an impact, feeling thoroughly horrified by the amount of rubbish that our build did produce. We did start to look to second-hand products, and we did look for upcycled things, and we did look at what we'd already got and thought, rather than throwing that away, what can we do to it that will make it now fit this space? We could go and buy a second-hand product that was very well made, but made 20 years ago, or we could go and buy something that might cost the same or slightly less, but it would never last that 20 years again.
When you bring a product into the house, is there any test or anything that you do before it comes in?
No, we don't test. We don't test things going into the house.
I'm just thinking.
We've had lots of people obviously think we're incredibly control freakish, and I don't blame you for asking that question. No, it's also people give you things and you have to look at it and go, oh no, I can't give that to my children for whatever reason. But that might be because it's containing nuts right through to that's not really that healthy for them to have. But that said, they have plastic, they have all this, they have all the stuff that most children have in their lives in that way. We just try and check before things come in. And it was, thinking like if we buy a new plant, we check that plant is going to be either neutral or have benefits, as opposed to potentially being poisonous or having a negative impact on the property.
So plant, that's quite interesting. We haven't mentioned that. What do you need to know about plants? I would have thought all plants good, no?
I think, some plants aren't so good for children and animals. We know that. They can be poison. And some plants just aren't as good. And we've put a lot of plants in that will hopefully help the air and will support the MVHR unit in what it's doing. We can't have a lot of fresh flowers, although we do sometimes still have them because of the pollen, and it does have an impact. So we have less flowers, more plants. We know there are being studies being done at the moment about the impact that can have on quite a relatively small residential space. And to be honest, plants is one of the easier ones to do the research on. There's a lot of research out there about what plants are good for your home, good for your garden. We looked for plants that would be bee pollinated over tree pollinated in the garden, because obviously tree pollination involves the pollen being in the air, and that can be an irritant. Bee pollination, that's great, that's nice, it's much more localized. But that said, having the garden, having the outside, our children go outside, they go to the park, they go to the playground at school, they go to the woods, they do all those outsidey things. So we're going to come in contact with it. We live near a very busy road. There are all sorts of things we cannot possibly control. It's just what we're doing within our little small environment here.
So you've talked a couple of times about MVHR, which is a ventilation system. Well, what stage did you discover about indoor environments and how you might like to build this house?
We were aware that passive house equals a more healthy environment, and also from an ecological and also environmental perspective. And then we worked with our project managers who are specialists in this area. And I think had we not have worked with them, I'd never heard of an MVHR unit. I have heard of air conditioning, and I probably would just assume that's what it was, which it isn't. And the concept that we then also, actually, to go back a step, we also did discuss this with the boys' paediatrician. And there have been studies done on children with severe asthma, where they are essentially put inside a chamber at night, where they only breathe this clean air for that night. And they've had very high success rate with the children then becoming more healthier and their immune systems being stronger and having less asthma, less allergies. That sounds incredibly severe to us, the idea of putting your children in a chamber. But when we heard about the MVHR unit through our project managers, we realised actually that concept could apply to the whole home. Our natural instinct is to fling a window open to get some air in and to ventilate a house, and it's still definitely still there, built in as an instinct. Like, oh, it's stuffy, let's open the window. But what you realise with the MVHR unit is if you've got the house sealed and this is working and it's filtering the air coming in and out, you have the freshest air, and it's very noticeable. And I don't think we would have ever thought of purchasing one, ever thought of putting one in. Now I'll make sure every home I have has one of these, and I'll advocate for people to do it, because the outside air is actually filthy and full of, where we live, it's full of pollutant.
I live in the countryside and was quite surprised at the colour of my filters after 3 months.
Right.
I know it's obviously just after building, so I think they have a bit more dust on the whichever way around it is, intake, outtake.
I know both of ours were filthy, so not so good. Definitely not so good here. But we need, at the moment, a lot of people have said to us, why don't you just move to the countryside? Surely you should move to the countryside with children. But at the moment, we are tied to living where we are. We need to be near to London for our jobs, for our work, for our family. So for us, it was doing something that meant that we could have healthier lifestyle in the home without having to move into the country.
Have you ever explored that as an option, maybe a holiday for a couple of weeks? That sometimes, does it make any difference or not really?
I think a holiday always makes a difference. There you go.
That's a very good point. That's a stupid question to just ask.
No, not at all. I mean, well, we try and take them to places where, and holidays for us are actually quite tricky, because we're trying to find somewhere that is we have to do quite a lot of risk assessment before we go on a holiday. But we go to the countryside with them, and I think all children just love being outside, don't they? All children benefit from running around in the fresh air, and it sounds like a cliche, but I can assure you that most people from first hand would say what a huge benefit that is for children.
What did you want to build then? You've got a site now. Maybe you could just outline the constraints.
So we purchased a back garden plot, which comes with several planning restrictions, including the fact you can only go up one storey, and you are limited by the size of the plot to the square footage that you can take up above ground. So the design was very clever.
That's planning on day one. You knew that, or that was when you put in for planning?
The plot came with pre-approved planning for a design that took all of those factors into account, and it was a beautiful design, absolutely gorgeous home that they had designed, and it accounted for the fact that we needed to go down in order to make this into a family home. We then worked with our project managers, who are a design build team, to adapt it, A, to our budget, which obviously was the first one, and then B, to fix our lifestyle, which was slightly different from the original designs on that. And I think because we'd already had we knew roughly what this house was going to look like. We knew what the square footage was going to be. We made internal tweaks and some external tweaks. We changed how the building was going to be made because we needed to do it fast. That's because we had this access issue, which was very prevalent in the Grand Designs programme, but we had a very short period of time to access our plot because otherwise we can't get anything up our drive.
Was this from the neighbour who sold the piece of land? It was.
It was from the neighbour who sold a piece of land, yes.
So when they talked about, will we be able to extend access, was that actually a big deal, or?
It was intensely stressful for us.
It was, oh right.
Just because it's, we would become completely stranded the minute that access went. The plot that we had access over was also for sale at the same time, and we didn't know who was going to buy that, whether they would allow us to continue access. And we built a house in 9 months, which we now know is actually a really quick period of time to build a house in. Everybody around you thinks that's an incredibly long time to have their lives affected by your build. We would be the same. It's something anyone living next to a build wants that build to be finished as quickly as possible. So in many ways, it probably sped up the process because we knew from day one we were only going to have this limited access. We had to have a prefab the top ground floor part of the house brought in, which saved so much time, made off-site, shipped in. We were watertight within 2 days. It impacted on our choices that we made, but we don't regret those.
Build system, I often think that this is a big one for health. So below ground, you're sometimes restricted, you've got your hands tied. What about above ground?
So above ground, we went for the SIPS panels, and it's a company that specialises in passive house SIPS panels. So we knew that all of the checks were being done with them. They also install and build it, so they come with a team, put it all up as well, which is you're benefiting from them being experts, and this is what they do every day, is build this type of property. We had to go for concrete below ground, but once concrete sets, it's pretty low impact VOC-wise.
I should think for this site, I don't know, I'm just imagining here, you always think things like straw bale or perhaps a timber frame with blown-in newspaper might be healthier, but I mean, is this meeting constraints as well of, say, finance as well? Finance and
feasibility. So we weighed up what to insulate the cavities with, and in the end we went for the lowest VOC that we could product that we could get, in the knowledge that once it was plastered over, it would be negligible. And obviously, We weren't in the house at that time living with that, so it was in for a very short period of time and then put away. I think if you were building a completely an eco house, which this isn't an eco house, this is more a family home which has got eco credentials, I think is the way we like to think about it in that way. We have got plastics in here, we have got things in this property that definitely would not be in a home that was 100% an eco home.
But eco house is a very difficult term. It's sort of it can be a bit wishy-washy at one end or absolutely extreme. So I think you've got a lot of very positive things going on here. So we've got the SIPs up, we've got I guess, having that speed for the access. So how did you negotiate the access? Because if it's someone selling a house, it doesn't sound simple.
No, it's not. It started off very straightforward, but it wasn't. In hindsight, what we would have done is said, from the day that we break ground, we need this much time. But it wasn't set out like that. It was, your access will run out on this day in July, and it didn't. They were really generous, and they did grant us longer access. And a different situation, we could have found ourselves completely screwed at that point, paying money we didn't have and all the rest of it. But essentially, we had someone that did want this house to be built, and they were very much on our side with it. It's a learning process. There is an awful lot of paperwork that goes into lots of contracts, lots of lawyers, lots of things all the time in that setting up period. And you hope that at that time you make all the right decisions. That was probably one of the ones that we didn't have the time to think about, like, oh, what if it does actually take 6 months longer than we thought to get planning? What if Brexit happens? What if these things happen that have a knock-on effect on our build? So it was very stressful, but the build was stressful, and there was every day there's something to worry about, and you're probably worrying about so many things that you just raw through it all.
How did you manage your time? I know as well that probably my business suffered through the process. So you're already trying to focus on one thing, or did you prioritise the build for a little while?
No, we had to do both. So I was here in a hut, in our health and safety hut, working, or I would go to work and switch off all stuff to do at the house, and it was really difficult. But we would be up very late into the night during this, trying to finish off either the house or finish off our work. And it was a very odd feeling the day that we got all of the final certificates through, and I realised we've just freed up this huge bit of time. What on earth are we going to do with it now? Let's find another plot. No. No, definitely not. I think my business partner would probably sack me.
Oh, so having a business partner, that must have, did that help a little bit?
So having, what we did as well was, obviously, she was very supportive of it, and I hope that we managed to get the work done. We kept everything going alongside it. And I think, life goes on, doesn't it? We've gone through having multiple children between us, buying, selling, renovating, doing all these things. You manage the both of them, run my own business with her. But it's part of the lifestyle. It would have been much harder if it was a 9-to-5 job. I don't know how people manage that. Because of my job, I can sit up late at night and finish off what I need to get done. I can work on a Saturday and Sunday and get it done. That allowed for that flexibility. I would advise people to take time off if you're going to try and do this, or have a project manager that you hand everything over to. I don't know how you can possibly keep your eye on what's going on and be in work 9 to 5.
How were you procuring this? You've obviously got John from Inhabit, who I know is very competent, but what's the process? You said design and build, did you?
Yes. So Inhabit did the design and build for us. So they handled the structure of the building, and then we did a lot of we worked as a team, and we did a lot of the rest of the procuring. So we procured the parts that needed to be put into the house, the fixtures, the fittings. We had our own electricians, our own plumbers get involved in it as well. Possibly in hindsight, I'd advise people, although that saved some money because we didn't have a company to do everything. If you can find a company that does everything, no gaps will occur. And if the gaps do occur, one person is responsible.
What do you mean by gaps? Gaps in time, or
more in communication and who's responsible for what and when should something get done? When you've got people who aren't used to working together, we were incredibly fortunate that actually everybody that worked on this build, it was a pleasure to have them on it, and they did work together as a team. But occasionally you'd come across an issue which is, well, that's not my remit, it's not my remit, but whose is it? Somebody has to dig that hole and put that pipe work in and connect it up. So we had that side of things was more than I'd expected. I think it's the intricacies, and it goes all the way through to the fixtures and finishings as well. You probably do want somebody that can manage the whole thing from start to finish. We wanted to have control and sight of what was being bought. For us, the finished look was very important. We've lived in a new build before where somebody else has made all those decisions. We've done renovations before, which is essentially almost just this part of the process where you're choosing bathrooms and kitchens and flooring, making sure that everything is the right colour. I'm very fortunate in my job to get to go to some absolutely beautiful homes and beautiful buildings. And I wanted to take some of that learning and put it into our property in order that we didn't get to do everything that we wanted to do, but we wanted to put the basics in that would allow us to build on it now over the next couple of years.
Have you got any of those design ideas? Art is obviously very close to your heart. So what were you wanting to do with the spaces?
It was very exciting when we started looking at the 3D modelling of the home, and we could see all these big blank white walls. And I actually can honestly say we did know what art we were going to hang on the walls long before there were any walls to hang on. But it gave us that chance to say, no, could that wall be a little bit bigger, or could we put a recess in here for this piece? And
love that. And designing the walls. Can we just have it?
But it's those finishing touches that I think if you just walked into a white square space, you don't have that opportunity to do it. But we were able to work with interior designers, lighting designers, obviously with the design team, to make sure that we did get these clever little things that hopefully add to the interior experience.
Just going back to health then, we've obviously talked through the process. Are there any other key concepts or things that you should mention in regards to health?
Something that we've never, ever thought about in any of our other homes that we've lived in is lighting. And we sourced through our electrician an absolutely incredible lighting designer, Darren, and he actually is doing research into the benefits of light for health. And we were able to start to learn about another whole aspect. We obviously know that lighting is important, and you want to have a nice bright light to have in certain spaces, and slightly different lighting for different moods. But he was actually able to tell us about the actual LEDs that we were going to use. And downstairs, we were worried because it was going to be a basement. Was there going to be much light? So we lit that space to give a feeling of daylight. We're very fortunate that the light well is so effective. It doesn't really feel like a basement. But at night, we can put the lights on, and you don't feel as if you are in a sunken space. It's in the boys' room in particular. We've got settings that we're able to turn the lights down to, it just calms everything down. It doesn't go from bright white to dark. It goes a gentle, I'm trying to remember the name of the lighting now. Biodynamic lighting is the name of the system. That's been used throughout the property, and we've got two different types of lighting. So we've got feature lighting, and then we've also got the general lighting. And it's incredible. And we miss the lights in this home when we go to other properties. You feel it in your eyes. You feel how it affects and how it's harder to see things, or just harder to be in a space. And again, we would never have thought of this. We would just have let's put 12 spotlights here, spots on the ceiling. Let's have one pendant here, done. But we were actually able to look at the tones of the LEDs, the biodynamic lighting, and interestingly enough, then by proxy learn about the impact that lighting has on health.
I'm always intrigued because every consultant that we had on our project, I feel, brought a lot of value. Was that your experience too? What were the main consultants you can think have given you a real help here? So
actually, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, really. The person that brought the whole thing together was our landscape designer. We've got this huge opportunity with this plot and all this space to have a garden that our children could never have had, ever had in any of the homes we lived in before. And so Ellen was involved from the beginning in the design process and making sure that we didn't just turf this bit or just put a square patio in here. Her huge coup was the design of the light well. We had bought this plot when the design for the light well was a slope. It became very obvious to us when we were left with this like caving in doom piece of mud that a slope was never going to work or be practical when you have children and a dog. That was definitely going to be an absolute disaster and a 4-meter drop. And she designed this incredible terraced area for us that wasn't just to bring light in and to retain the soil, but gave us a large amount of extra living room outside. And we have 2 spaces now out there. We've got beautiful flowers. It makes our bedroom feel as if we're connected with the garden.
So a few questions as we get towards a close about how life has been. Firstly, we talked about health throughout this, and is this anecdotal or has it really helped the kids?
Well, I think as a family, we all feel amazing because we're living in our own home that we built, and the sense of relief, achievement, excitement, gosh, all of that was a huge journey we went on together as a family. The boys and our daughter were very involved in it. They visited all the time. So our first year in the property was certainly us enjoying it, and I think we all felt better because we had the stress was going, the stress was relieving. We were asked the question about the boys' health maybe 4 months after we'd moved in, and we hadn't really thought about it, I suppose. We'd just been busy moving in, getting ourselves ready. But before, they were having weekly reactions to unknown things. Wherever we're living, wherever they would come to us, covered in hives, whatever it might be, having runny nose, streaming, sneezing, having the beginnings of an allergic reaction. They are not having those anymore at home. We still have them outside. They still do occur. We've had 1 or 2 in the home that have happened, and we think we know why each of those had occurred, so we know the cause of it. That's fine, and that's dealt with. The fact that everything in this property, we know where it came from, we know that it's safe and good for them, seems to be working. We haven't had the allergy tests redone within this last 12-month period. That will be very interesting to us. But I can honestly say that they have been healthier. They're not cured. But that's not the case. Our son still does have asthma. He still, these things. The night asthma attacks significantly reduced. We've had a few because he suffers seasonally, but they've been considerably less. He hasn't been in hospital, considerably less than we were having. We need to obviously get the allergy test done to know if any changes happened there. I don't know. We wouldn't dare risk it just on a trial at home. But overall, our family is healthier. Everyone is healthier. Everyone is happier. Everyone sleeps really well. Sleep was a big problem. The waking up with the asthma attacks, just the not being able to have a good, solid night's sleep affects everybody. Now, our sons sleep through most of the time. If they don't, it's normal childhood things. It's not panic, we need to get to the hospital things. I hope long may this last. I hope this is something that's. We didn't think it would happen that quickly. We assumed it would take years, but at home, yes, it's made a huge difference. And if we were to do this again, and if we were to give advice to anybody, it would be, I think we can all make changes in our existing homes. You don't have to build a house to do this. There are changes you can make in your existing home that can have a significant impact on your overall health.
And finally, is there a thought that you want to close on? Let's say someone wants to create a healthy home and they've enjoyed this podcast today, either any resources or just maybe do want to repeat a piece of information, anything that just would close this nicely.
The largest piece of learning that I took away from doing this build was to ask questions. It's not to just assume anything. And don't assume that because somebody is selling it that this is something that is okay for you to take home and have. Do your research, take responsibility for it, and ask questions, because I think by us as consumers asking questions of retailers, they will become more willing to label things better and to give you more honest answers about the makeup of their products.
Well, I've really enjoyed my chat today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for your time.
Head online to take a look at the show notes that accompany this session, houseplanninghelp.com/245. You can review the main information. We always provide a summary. There are photos through the build to completion, and we'll put you in touch with Elinor on Instagram. She's also got her own website that she's mentioned, Healthy House Heroes, houseplanninghelp.com/245. Couple of bits to finish up with today. First of all, an iTunes review. Thank you very much to Damien Reed, who's titled this one Essential Listening for All Self-Builders. Hours of insightful information from experts and experienced house builders. If you want to build and live in a high-quality, thermally efficient home, then this is the podcast for you. Highly recommended. We love your iTunes reviews. Firstly, it keeps us on track. Sometimes I think, why am I doing this? Why am I investing all this time? And it just takes a little reminder like that. Thank you so much. Someone, even if we just help a handful of people, then it's got to be worth it. So iTunes is still the largest directory. And that means if you can write us a short review, doesn't have to be long, just need to go in there, then it will guide more people in our direction. So we will thank you there. Now, if you want more, we obviously do the podcast, but we try to do even more in the hub. And this came about really because my background, I run a production company and I used to work in television and also radio. So I was just thinking, how can I use my skills? I want to do even more if I can. One of the struggles is that making videos or anything that's going to take a little bit of time ends up costing quite a bit of money. So I thought, how can I do this? I want to follow complete builds all the way through, making interesting video packages, trying to knuckle down on the details that I don't think you get everywhere else. And that's when I set up the Hub. So it's our membership community, and it's a bit like gym membership, I suppose you could say. When you want us, we're here. When you don't, you can just check out and say, maybe see you another time. So it's got all sorts of digital resources in there, the in-depth video case studies. We add a new chapter to one of those every month. Currently, we're focusing on my own build. Then we've also got some more, actually. Alex Baines has progressed with his, so we'll be heading back to his project. Buckinghamshire Passive House, that's a complete in-depth video case study. We've got our learning courses as well, where we try to map things out step by step. We have our monthly conference call, where we try and bring guests in. We've had people like Mark Brinkley. We also check in with self-builders. We had a chat with Mike Coe recently, which was really good because he just gave us that feeling of, what's it like in the middle of construction? And he's on a tight budget as well. He brought some slides so we could see all the progress. We could ask questions. Lovely and interactive. That's how we like those. And also the forum is where we can continue the conversation. You can also have a dedicated part of the Hub so that you can see that you are making progress, because sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And also reach out for help or just keep yourself accountable. So we've got all of that in the Hub. We'd love you. Just check it out. See if it's for you. houseplanninghelp.com/join. That's your lot for today. Thank you so much for listening. The House Planning Help podcast is produced by Regen Media, content that matters.